So we have a working, simple Angular application, and we're going to be building components. An application is going to be a collection of multiple components, right? We already have one component. It is the root component that came by default with the application. And what we're going to do is that we're going to replace the content in there and put our own content based on other components. Right? So we're going to be building lots and lots of different components. And a component, as I mentioned earlier, is the collection of these 4 files, right? The TypeScript file, the HTML file, which we already looked at, also a dedicated CSS file that is per component. So each component has its own styling that is applicable only to that one component. And then you have a spec file, which is it's a unit test TypeScript that kind of enforces best practices that each component should be designed in such a way that it can be tested individually, independently of all other components, right? So they're promoting that best practice. So let's create our first component. You can certainly create your components from scratch. Basically, a component is just a class, right, that you export that has its own constructor, and then you annotate it. You annotate it using this component annotation, right? And we've seen an example of that already. Here is the root application component, and the reason this becomes a component by annotating it using the @component annotation, right? This is again using these modern language features such as aspect-oriented programming, which is very, very popular in the Java world, in the .NET world, right? That you can make a simple class, give it a whole bunch of behaviors, right? By just annotating it. So obviously this @component encapsulates a lot of behavior behind the scenes. There's a lot of JavaScript that make the component possible. In React, basically this @component probably would just be implemented as just an extension of the React.component, right? And then you just inherit a whole bunch of things, yes? But here, the @component allows you to configure the behavior it makes this a component. So you can do this, certainly you can do it by hand. But an easier way of creating a component is by using the ng command line interface, right, to create new components for yourself. So let's do that. If we go to our terminal, this is where our application is running. I'm just going to create a new tab. We're in the same root directory of our project, right? We're in the same directory. So we can use the ng command, right, to create a brand new component by saying ng generate component, and then the name of the component that you want to build, right? So let's create one. We'll say create course list. So we're going to build a simple component that is going to allow us to render a list of courses. Remember, we're working on a online learning management system, and we're implementing certain use cases that students might want, right? They might want to see a list of courses that they're registered for, right? And they might want to navigate to one of those courses. So let's build a list of courses here. So this is going to create the 4 files that make up a component. You'll notice that what it did is that it created under the app directory, source app directory, it created a course list directory, right, using the name of the component that I used, right? And then it created a CSS, HTML, spec file, and a TS file, right? All using the name that I chose, plus it appended a component to it, right? If we go to our IDE, we can find it under the app directory. There is our course list, the 4 files. See that, right? If we peruse through the content here, we'll notice that the HTML file is just some dummy content, right? That just has a simple paragraph, right? It's meant to be thrown away. And also we have the TS is the JavaScript portion of this, right? Where we do the behavior, the data, the event handling lives here. Notice it's very similar to our root component, right? Notice it has the name of the class based on the name that I gave it, course list, but it's all capitalized. It also, let's see, it's annotated correctly. It has a default constructor. It's pointing to the HTML file, right? That renders the dummy content, right? But also notice that, oops, not this one. TS, there we go. Notice that the way we're going to refer to this component is by using this selector, right? In React, the tag that you use to refer to a component is just the name of the class, right? You import the class, and then you use the name of the class as the element name, right? In Angular, it's slightly different. You can actually configure what tag you want to use. You can declare what tag you want to use by declaring it here in the selector, right? So instead of React using the tag course list component, right? Instead, in Angular, we're going to use whatever we declare here, right? And we can change it. We can name it whatever we want, right? So in our case, it'll be something like that. Okay? All right, so let's do it. Let's use it. So
Is there a best practice for Angular? Like I noticed in React.
yeah, so the practice typically is that notice that this has a token prepended to the name of the component, right? And usually this would be an acronym that you would use in your organization, in your company, right? Perhaps a 3 or 4 letter acronym that describes or spells out, NEU for the university, or WebDev for this class, or CS 4500, or whatever, right? That it's unique within your context, right? So that you can uniquely identify and namespace, right, your components, so that they don't collide with somebody else's component, right? That I'm creating a course list and you're creating a course list. So which one is it, right? So we can prepend it with some acronym that makes this unique. So yeah, so there's a best practice of using that. Other than that, you can name them whatever you want beyond that. So here we have the root component. There's a root component. What we're going to do is that we're going to bring in our component that we just created, right? Our brand new course list. So here's our course list. There it is. And we close that. Once we close that and we go and re-render this, let's see, where are we? There it is. Notice that it renders the course list works. See that? So that course list is the default dummy content of the HTML, right? So this is the equivalent, right? This is the equivalent in React, right, of this HTML tag is mapped to this component, and the component tells me what should this component render. It should render that HTML, right? In React, you would do render, and then you would do return, right? You return the content in here, right? Whereas here, you say, well, that is the template that I want to render when this selector is used. Make sense? All right.